British rule in India began in the mid-1700s as a hostile corporate acquisition orchestrated by a single, ruthless trading company. At the 1757 Battle of Plassey, the East India Company deployed its own European-trained troops to crush the local Nawab's indigenous forces. This was a private corporation using military force to secure regional trade dominance. The real turning point came 7 years later at the Battle of Buxar. Following that victory, the resulting Treaty of Allahabad granted the East India Company a legal power called Diwani. Looking at this map of 18th century India, Diwani gave the corporation the absolute right to collect taxes directly from the massive populations of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. By siphoning the wealth of these regions, the company essentially financed its own expansion. The tax revenue extracted from local farmers paid for the private armies that slowly swallowed the rest of the subcontinent, forging a 200-year empire. The loss of Indian sovereignty was recorded on a ledger. An entire population was stripped of its wealth to maximize shareholder returns in London. 2 centuries later, the subcontinent broke free. When history books illustrate that victory, they almost exclusively feature the men who negotiated the terms of the new nation. That official record leaves a massive void. It omits the vast underground network of fiercely defiant women and marginalized fighters and unsung martyrs who actually forced the British to the negotiating table. To understand how the empire actually fell, we have to step out of the diplomatic boardrooms and onto the streets, where a hidden vanguard paid for freedom in blood. The treaties were signed by politicians, but the colonial machine was dismantled by invisible foot soldiers who made the continued occupation impossible. The earliest pushback against colonial expansion came from local rulers. Decades before the famous Sepoy Mutiny, a former princess named Velu Nachiyar became the first queen to wage a massive, coordinated war against the British forces. During the widespread 1857 rebellion, women directly led the military resistance. Leaders like Begum Hazrat Mahal brazenly seized control of cities like Lucknow, engaging the East India Company in open combat. By the early 1900s, the resistance had shifted. Isolated royal military campaigns evolved into sprawling, nationwide grassroots movements like Non-Cooperation and Quit India. The sheer scale of these protests required millions of bodies. The physical burden of marching, occupying public spaces, and facing police batons shifted directly onto the shoulders of everyday civilian women. The colonial police could easily target and execute a rebel queen. They were entirely unequipped to suppress an endless tide of grandmothers, mothers, and daughters filling the streets day after day. At the time, simply holding the Indian flag was a highly illegal, dangerous act of defiance. Knowing this, Madame Bikaji Kama smuggled the colors to Germany in 1907, proudly unfurling them at an international socialist conference. The acts of defiance only grew bolder. During the pivotal Quit India movement of 1942, a 33-year-old woman named Aruna Asaf Ali marched into a Bombay Maidan, hoisting the banned flag in plain view of the British regime. The colonial response to these acts was lethal. Matangini Hazra, leading a procession, was shot 3 times by British forces. Bleeding heavily, she refused to drop the flag, marching forward while chanting Bande Mataram until she died. Tara Rani Srivastava led a protest march in front of a police station alongside her husband. When he was shot, she bandaged his fatal wounds right there in the dirt, picked up the flag, and continued leading the crowd forward. Beyond the public protests, there was a highly militant, underground edge to this resistance. Rajkumari Gupta routinely smuggled revolvers to revolutionary cells by hiding the firearms in her undergarments, walking past British checkpoints completely undetected with her 3-year-old son by her side. The British Empire severely underestimated the women they occupied. These fighters deliberately weaponized that blind spot, using their marginalized status to move freely and strike fatal, unexpected blows to colonial logistics and morale. Millions of these calculated strikes and street-level sacrifices gradually paralyzed the colonial administration. The subcontinent simply became ungovernable for the British. Facing the complete collapse of their authority, the British yielded to a multi-stage exit plan, leading to the formation of the Interim Government of India in 1946. The momentum on the ground was so absolute that the United States didn't even wait for the final paperwork. The U.S. established diplomatic relations and opened a full embassy in New Delhi before India was formally independent. On August 15, 1947, President Harry Truman officially recognized the fully independent Union of India. The statehood confirmed by men in tailored suits was directly secured by the women who bled in the streets. By recovering the names of these erased fighters, we acknowledge that true sovereignty requires immense, invisible sacrifice. Their fierce defiance broke a 200-year empire, and that spirit continues to define the modern nation today.